You realize it's only 1 minute after the official start time.
All right, so my name is John Goodwin. I'm the president of Galaxy Press, and we publish the Rise of Future series. I've been involved since volume 2, and we just published volume 40. And we have as our guests with us, we've got Mr. Orson who's been a judge for over 30 years. And then we have 2 winners from volume 40. We've got John Schleicher. John Eric Schleicher.
Schleicher. Like a K.
And I just went blank. Yeah, Tom Vandermolen.
Or, as we have learned, he's sometimes referred to as Tom Voldemort.
So, first of all, how many of you are familiar with Writers of the Future? Raise your hand. Okay, good. So many of you, that's great. So this is a quick recap and overview of what it is. It's a contest that was created by Owen Hubbard in 1983 to provide a means for aspiring writers to have a chance for their works to be seen and acknowledged. It's gone on to become one of the most successful and respected competitions in the world for science fiction and fantasy. We'll have Scott talk about that too briefly once I finish this, but it's the purpose is to, like I say, lend in an environment which is not known to be unhostile to writers. It gives you a forum and a base that you can actually grow your craft as a writer and to become a success yourself. We've got a 64% success rate with winners of the contest over the 40 years between writers and illustrators who've gone on to successful careers in their respective art form. So we also, since then, it's grown. So we have the contest, and after this we have card that you can get which has how to enter the contest, and we also have a free online writing workshop which we created at the very beginning of the pandemic. It has several videos with Mr. Card. It also has videos with Tim Powers and Dave Wolverton, and it does an essay.
You both know more than me, so you've got to watch them all.
Please. I'm sure there's about 40 people, 50 people here that take you to task on that data. So the whole thing with this program is to give a helping hand. And so we've got the free online workshop. We have a forum that's free to enter that you can join. And there's the one basic rule is that there's no hate. Nothing like that. You have one chance to make a disparaging comment. If you do that, you're given a warning. You do it a second time, you're banned forever. That's just it. You're out of there. We're trying to provide a space where you can actually just be yourself and grow your craft as a writer. And you get helpful hints from other writers who have won the contest and judges. We also have a Rise of Future podcast, which has been going on for 5 years now. Each episode gets about 2 million listens, and it's very, very successful. Mr. Clark's been a guest a couple times. You've both been guests on there when they won the contest. So anyway, that's what the contest is. That's what it does. It's free to enter. It's blind judge, so that all the judges see is your story and a number. They have no idea of your age, nationality, sex, ethnic, religion, nothing. It's just based on you and your quality of writing. And last year we had winners from 8 countries. The year before, winners from 9 countries. Overall, we've had winners from 50 countries with entries from over 175 countries. So it really is international in scope. And the winners have won from anywhere from the ages of 15 to 73. So again, the judges have no idea of the age or anything. They just know your storytelling. Oh, good. Here comes Todd. Fine. Now we can start. Now we can start.
Sorry, guys, I lost a half an hour.
Yes. So anyway, that said then, let me just start then. Brief introduction. You all know Scott Card, but just briefly, your take on the Rise of the Future, because you've been with it the longest.
It's been a while.
Yes.
Okay, so now you're asking me to do that. Okay, I didn't want to. First of all, I just have to say 175 countries. That means some of those countries are yet their postal service apparently works, or it's being online.
Digital now, yes.
Yeah, it's all digital. But I have been teaching writing for many years, and ever since this contest began, I've been telling my students, if you're writing science fiction and fantasy, the only place to submit your story when it's done is Writers of the Future. But you won't have to wait long to get an answer. When I was starting out, it was only the magazines if you were starting in short stories. And so Analog reported really fast. I didn't realize it took 3 months. I was dying the whole time. But when I found it, when Vandermolen, the new editor at the time, responded, he declined to publish the story I had sent him because he said Analog publishes science fiction, not fantasy. And I was momentarily outraged because my story was obviously science fiction. And then I realized, no, here's the difference between science fiction and fantasy. My story is set in a forest full of trees, and science fiction has sheet metal and rivets. And so if you look at the cover of the books, you'll see that that's absolutely the way that it is. Every now and then you can have an ancient ruin or something for the fantasy, but by and large, it's forest versus modern industrial stuff. And so because of that, I sent him a story that had been festering in the back of my mind for a long time, called Ender's Game, and he rejected that. And that's as far as I'm going to take that to know. Obviously, he eventually accepted it, but then after that I sent it to another editor at another magazine, and it was a year before I heard anything. A year. Now I wouldn't stand for that. I'd just write a little note saying, give it back. And, because clearly he's either overworked or the laziest guy, and either way I don't need him reading my story. So I'm now snottier and meaner, but at the time I just dealt with it as best I could. Here's Writers of the Future. Look at the schedule of contests. Every 3 months, and you're notified very quickly. By the standards of publishing, when you send a story into Writers of the Future, you don't have to wait for a year of your life before you find out what's happening. And they don't reject it, it just doesn't win sometimes. In fact, usually it doesn't win. But what I always tell them is, until you've sold so many things that you're no longer eligible to submit to Writers of the Future, Writers of the Future is where you send it because you're not wasting your time. If you are not chosen, you didn't waste much time waiting. And of course, then my other advice then was, when you send off your story to Writers of the Future, write another before the next weekend, because you need to be always writing if you're going to succeed at this. But Writers of the Future helps you do that. I've also seen over and over again that people who are published in Writers of the Future, which is not just the winners of the quarterly contest. It includes others that are meritorious, honorable mentions and so forth from time to time. But there is no better launch to a writing career in science fiction and fantasy than this anthology. None better. Coming out with your first novel is not as good a launch as being in Writers of the Future, because the editors pay attention. If you can submit a story or a novel manuscript or a treatment to a publisher, to an editor, and your cover letter says, I won the second quarter prize from Writers of the Future in whatever year it is, you're immediately at the top of the pile. You're not sitting down there waiting and waiting and waiting before anybody even looks at it, because nobody gets the quarterly win or the honorable mention or whatever without being a really good writer. And so that's kind of the certification. Every now and then a publisher will publish a book that stinks. I hope I don't have too many in that category, but I think I have one at least. But I'm not telling you which one ever. Okay. But my point's made, isn't it?
It's very well agreed.
Sorry, I'm having a Joe Biden moment and couldn't remember where I began that sentence.
Okay, and just arrived another one of our judges, and he picked up the mantle after his mother Ann McCaffrey passed. So this is Todd McCaffrey. Welcome in, please.
Well, it wasn't so much picked up the mantle. You guys were actually trying to enroll me when Mom was still alive. Unfortunately, she passed away before we could tell her. But yes, I've been in science fiction fandom since a long time. And of course, I'm Todd McCaffrey, I'm McCaffrey's son. Also write books myself, and have had the honor of being a judge now for 20 years. Yeah, so it's been a lot of fun. I would say if you're thinking about writing and you're willing to write short, this is the best place to submit it. You can submit online for free once a quarter, keep submitting until they pay you and they fly you out to Hollywood and put you in a week-long writer's workshop and help you with PR and everything, and it's really amazing. And it was started because L. Ron Hubbard realized that creatives are the power in our society and we need more of them, and he wanted to create more creatives, and he succeeded very well.
Good. Thank you very much.
You will.
And Mr. Schleicher.
So I've been seriously writing for 9 years. Like most new writers, when I started writing, I wrote a novel. Then I finished the first draft of the novel. Then I did a second draft, third draft, fourth draft. Kept on revising for probably a couple of years. And I had this genius idea. Looking back, kind of exercise akin to like CPR and graveyard. And I found out about the contest through Dave Farland. He used to be the coordinating judge, and he was the guest of honor at my local con. I live in Missoula, and similar to what Mr. Hart said, is he said if you want to break in, first off, short stories is a great way to develop craft. You can jump in, learn that. If you're able to write a good short story, you can write out, but still you have to write a complete story. Just do it more succinctly. It's a very difficult thing to do, but it's a great way to develop a craft. And so once I found out about the contest, I utilized all the resources that the contest has. The forum is a fantastic way to meet other writers, to swap stories, to be around like-minded folks, all aiming for kind of the same goal. To be lifted up and to find friends, and friends with critique partners with some people from Forum a couple years ago. The online workshop as well, and the online workshop is free and it helps you from start off with a blank page and it walks you through to a complete story. Many of the judges offer Q&As. I've been into quite a few of Scott Hart's Q&As.
And he's learned by going to more than one. I only know 5 things and I say them every time.
But this is a contest that the ethos is to pay it forward. And I'm now a beneficiary of that ethos. That L. Ron Hubbard started, that all the judges believe in, and it's not just a talking point. You see it when you talk to them. They want you to succeed. Another great benefit about the contest is the fact, when you send your stories off to short story markets, the rejections, it's a rite of passage that you all go through, and I have a stack of a couple hundred rejections. What's great about this contest is that you can have a great barometer because you can also, there's an honorable mention, several honorable mention, several finalists, semi-finalists, finalists, etc. So when I first started submitting to the contest, and I submitted every single quarter, and it gave me a deadline to aim for as well, and kept me going. But I was able to kind of see that I was actually progressing. Self-doubt is a ugly, cozy partner of many writers, right? And so that gave me a crush the bear of, okay, I'm progressing, I'm getting there, you know, before I finally won. And it took me 14 submissions, and every single quarter I submitted before I finally won. So, you know, Dave Farland was a mentor of mine, and I'm so grateful that with that interaction I had at MissCon, and that decision based off his advice to hitch my development to this contest, and that's what I did. And now seeing the benefits of that decision.
Thank you. And Tom?
Yeah, just to mirror what John Eric said, it is a great way to repeatedly test your abilities to see how you're progressing through your writing career. There's some older folks here. If you're older, that's fine. I first tried to do this back in Volume 4 in the 1980s. Volume 4 in the 1980s.
So you were 5 years old?
Yes, I was actually 10. So.
Oh, okay.
But thank you. I look a little more. One of the things that I learned early on, I actually had a college English professor who had won the contest in the 4th year, and his story was illustrated by Jack Kirby. So I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. I like this. And he was one of the people who encouraged me to keep applying and trying out for the story, for the contest. And it has been a constant barometer of how you're doing. I did stop writing for about 20 years in the middle there, so that's why I'm saying, those of you who are a little older, there's quite a few of us, or for something called Writers Review, there's quite a few of us who are a bit older. So don't despair if your writing hasn't gone the way you think it has. This is a good place to come back to. Just try again and keep trying until you make it.
Thank you. Now, like I said, in the second half we're going to be we'll do a Q&A when anybody has questions. But one of the things that I said we cover is the idea of story prompts and writing short fiction. Now, story prompts is a subject that, you know, is very popular amongst writers, talking about what works, what doesn't work. So we've got varying opinions on the subject of story prompts. So I'm going to start with Todd on this, and then we'll go to Scott. But in the value, the use of story prompts, what works and what doesn't work, or even the need for them.
So I rarely use story prompts, and I'm rather resistant to the notion because I figure if you give me 24 hours, I can come up with a brand new idea. And I haven't slowed down on that one yet. But I was at one point, I was up at Craig Martell's Indie Capstone, which is a great place to learn more craft. And they did story prompts because it was a mixed group of 25 of us. And the prompt came out, you meet someone and you are smitten. Write 300 words now, you have 5 minutes. And that became the start of the second one of my novels in my pen name series. I was kind of like, wow. So it was great. It was kind of like, I'm paraphrasing myself, but it was, the problem with Daisy was that she was dead. Aside from that, she was perfect. And I went on from there. So they can be really, really useful because they pull you out of where you normally think.
Great.
So, mixed moods, you know?
Well, I have never used story prompts, except that I've used them constantly since I first started teaching. I just didn't call them that. Because I do a session with writers, at the beginning of the semester when it's in college and beginning of the workshop, where we do a thing I call 1,000 Ideas in an Hour. And I ask questions of the group that's assembled, and they come up with answers. And sometimes they come up with ridiculous answers on purpose to sabotage. Usually those are the best, because they're off the wall, and they know they're off the wall, but it's not the regular line of thinking. And so I call it 1,000 Ideas in an Hour because given the number of people in the room, they all have more than one idea about how to do it. And then the rest of the workshop is about how to take the idea and give it structure and form and turn it into a story. So the prompt doesn't get you far, but it gets you moving. And so if you're given something like that prompt that you described, that wasn't in the prompt. The whole novel wasn't in the prompt. What you wrote was in your head. And all the prompt did was wake you up to possibilities, give you a place to say it. Isn't that true?
Maybe. It was more of a challenge to say it.
Yeah.
So that worked. And that was also part, it was also the second book in the series, so I kind of knew where I wanted to go.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. But if it gave you a beginning, that's a gift.
Yeah.
And one thing too is on this, again, when you, after this, you can get one of these cards here, but it has a link to the online writing workshop. One of the videos is his talk on 1,000 story ideas.
I did one?
Yes.
Oh,
Good.
you'll get a much better version then.
Okay. Okay, John Eric.
So I'm a firm believer of whatever gets you to the story, to the blank page, it gets you writing. You know, I'm a pantser, and so things, you know, a prompt might get started, but then whatever, it morphs and etc. At the workshop, there's a very valuable exercise, a 24-hour story, so I'm also relatively speaking, compared to many writers, I'm a slow writer, slow drafter. My editor brain gets in the way of my creative brain, and every sentence has to be perfect, etc. And that keeps me from getting the story off sometimes. And so, at the workshop, they have this exercise where you're given a random object that's just assigned to you, and then you are asked to go interview a stranger. So we're in LA during this workshop, and then you are tasked to write a story within 24 hours. That prospect, it's very, for those who are familiar with the contest, you know about this exercise. It's talked about on the forums, and winners have spoken about their experience. And so that portion, that exercise is what I was most nervous about for the workshop. I was very concerned that I wasn't going to finish the story. I did finish, and now I'm shopping, and it's a good story. It took me 20 hours to write, so that was the longest one of everybody in our class. So I was very sleep deprived the next day, but it showed me that that the standards that I had for myself and these preconceived misconceptions that I had for myself were incorrect. And that's to make it in this game. You gotta sit down and keep on writing and write again and write again and write again. And so that was for me, a very valuable exercise. So, Joylyn Nye, the coordinating judge, submitted an item that was based off of a pattern that was created by AI. And so it's just this really random pattern. So the story was a very dystopian world where AI has disrupted the economy, etc. So that's what
I had a great object. I had a green bow.
A green what?
A green plastic Christmas bow. So that actually turned out really well. I really like the story of it. And I'm actually a shopping kind of too. But that was actually the first time I've ever written a prompt. Everything has just come up with the normal prompts you see every day. Why did this happen? Why did that not happen? That generates an idea in the back of your head. Eventually it becomes a story. So I actually don't have many opinions about the prompt because I almost never.
Great. And then just on the subject of writing short fiction itself, so you both talked about that's a great way to break in to becoming published. Anything else you'd like to say about that, Scott?
Yes. When I was starting out back in the dark ages, this was in mid-70s, I had started a theater company, and I didn't understand that only being $1,000 in debt at the end meant that you were a flaming success in theater. So, and that was with unpaid actors. So, it was a volunteer thing that we all did. But I had to make money to pay off those debts. And I thought, what can I do? The only thing I know how to do is write. Write and, take out the garbage stuff that I was doing at home. But I decided that I wanted to write fiction. And I knew enough about science fiction. I even had a science fiction idea that I've been tossing around since I was 16. And science fiction had a short story market where I wouldn't be competing with John Updike. You know, if I'm trying to write for the New Yorker or Atlantic Monthly, that's my competition, or for that matter, for Playboy, which used to be a really great market for fiction. And so I thought I can submit to these magazines. I've read enough science fiction that at least I won't embarrass myself. Of course I embarrassed myself, but not so badly, because I did know how to write. And here's the thing I knew. It's the great secret. I know this is not answering what you said, but we'll get back to that in just a second. It's the great secret, third person limited point of view, where you can get inside one character's head whenever you want, because everything that's on the page, all the narration is what he notices, and you don't have to, make it all be thoughts in his head. That's horrible. We don't actually think in language anyway. Language comes when we're trying to explain it or argue with somebody. But the third person limited, thank you. Third person limited viewpoint is the viewpoint of it's the way that you write commercial fiction of any kind today, unless you're trying to be published by Knopf for English professors to read and wonder how you got published when their stuff isn't. And it's snob fiction. And I had no interest in writing snob fiction, even if I could. A lot of what I read, I thought, this is like what people thought about Jackson Pollock. Is if I can do that, if my kid does that from his high chair, then how is that art? And I felt that way about a lot of the art fiction that I was reading. But science fiction still told stories. Even when it got arty, Harlan Ellison, I have no mouth and I must scream, or weird stuff, but all still a story. It made sense, told in time order. And then the other advice that I give is present tense is for the French and the snobs, because that's not how we write, how we tell stories in English. In English, we tell our true stories in past tense. What happened? And if you put it in present tense, it's absurd on the face of it, because you're not walking along writing as you go. So you have to accept this enormous barrier to believability and swallow hard and say, okay, I'm getting his reflections on it later in first person. It's just full of artifice. It's artificial. But third person past sounds natural. And it's much more immediate than present tense has ever been. Because with present tense, we know that it's a joke. See, a guy walks into a bar, see? Or it's an anecdote. I was driving on the freeway, it was snowing, and all of a sudden, and that's, I said was, so I'm driving along the freeway, see, and all of a sudden, and you tell that in present tense until somebody doubts you. It says, come on. And you go, yes, that's what happened. Right? Because when we're telling the truth, and we want them to know it's the truth, we do it past. Now, that's not what you asked. Remind me what you asked, because I've gotten lost.
You did really good.
No, that's I'm sorry. That's one of my rants. I'm going to do another then, since you won't remind me of what you asked. Very
He's
quickly.
made his notes. He's going to say anyway tonight, so let's just...
No, I'm not. Well, what I mainly wrote down was their names. Because I don't have a good memory for names. So if we've ever been introduced, I don't remember your name, just so that you understand. But then again, my wife has to remind me of my grandkids' names too. Anyway.
Then let me give Todd a chance here, and then we're going to open the door office halfway through already. So the main thing on this, and what you just said is a really important part of any panel when you do anyway, so that was good, thank you. So just on the value of short fiction, expand a little bit on launching it.
So Anne McCaffrey, whom you guys might have read, was started out at the time when the real money was in short fiction. There were a lot of magazines out there, Analog, FNSF, Galaxy, Worlds of It, lots. And so your deal was to get a story in there. and then do that again lots because you didn't make all that much money. And Mom came up with a really brilliant idea, or sort of fell upon it at some level, which is she had stories that connected together. So she famously had the short story The Ship Who Sang, which is a freaking masterpiece, and then wrote the sequel. And another
Not her first, I just have to ask.
What? No, her first was Freedom of Race.
Okay, sorry.
And she won because A.J. Budrus, the famous A.J. Budrus, cut 39 words off of her story because it was for a 1,000-word short story exactly, and she made $100. Otherwise, she would have made 35. You see, I can digress.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're not Joe Biden. Come on.
There's a lot of people I'm not. I'm not going to go throw names around. So anyway, getting back to the point, Mom wrote short stories, and short stories are a great way to build worlds and to hone your craft in world building. When you're writing a short story, you're looking about, let's say 5,000 words. When you're writing a novel, you're looking at about 80,000 words, or 90 or more. So you can get 16 or 15 short stories finished in the same amount of writing words that you could get one novel finished in. Your chances are simply better writing short of getting published. Your chances, particularly when you submit to Writers of the Future, become that much better because now, if you've written 15 short stories, you have 15 quarters, that's almost 4 whole years, worth of short stories ready to go. Well done. So it is a great way to go. It's a great way to start. Also, reading what's in the Writers of the Future volumes is a great way to get some prompts to say the famous Heinlein thing, which is, I can write better than that, or differently. Your voices are all different. What we're looking for as judges is something that makes us sit up and go, wow, never saw that before, never seen that before. Oh, this is interesting, or this is an amazing take on a very old idea. All of those are great. So, your voice is what's going to make it different. And we want to see that, and we suggest you write more short stories. Also, you can write in present tense. It's hard, but it's amazing.
Okay, so what we're going to do is, if anybody has any questions, we're going to have a microphone running.
Mike Runner.
So anybody have a question?
Emily's good.
So just raise your
Woman
hand.
of all work.
Okay, right up here in the front.
Big C.
Right here, purple. There you go.
Thank you. Actually, this is not quite a question, but it's a comment to two of the people that are up there. One is, Todd, thank you for the beets and roses. Todd, thank you for the beets and roses.
Oh, okay.
And you got me here.
Good.
So, and Mr. Card, thank you so much. I've known you as a writer for years and years and years, and it's awesome to be able to come and listen to what you have to say, because it makes so much more sense hearing you say it than reading it on paper.
Well, thank you very much, but I do have to say that I make John impatient.
Hey.
Yeah, hi. I have submitted to the contest like 6 or 7 times maybe. And I feel like something with my story is working because of like a few times I've gotten an honorable mention, but I've never, something's also not working because I can't quite get to like finalists. And I think without feedback, it's hard to know what's working and what's not working. So I guess what would be your advice to improve?
I would join the online community that they have. That's a great way to get feedback and to talk with other people. And also, honorable mention means keep going. You're almost there.
Your top 10%.
Yeah.
As an honorable mention, I routinely, about every other week, I will see an author publishing their first novel and saying, I also want an honorable mention in the Writers of the Future. That is right now, because of the repute of the contest, because it's known that it's a blind judge. So if a person gets honorable mention, it's known that they're top 10%. So automatically, they'll be reviewed. You won't necessarily, if you're a winner, you won't be, taking the top, but it pulls you out of the slush pile, as Norma mentioned.
Yeah.
In the online writing workshop, that's what made a major change in the quality of storytelling, because it takes you through each step. You'll have, I think, Mr. Cart's got like 3 or 4 videos in there. Tim Powers has several. Dave Wolfton, and there's about a dozen essays from Miller and Herbert as well. Great.
If I can add something regarding the form. So advice, going to the forum as well as many of the forumites, that's kind of what we call each other, everybody has a signature on the bottom of their every single post, and they post how they have performed in the contest, like quarter 39, got an honorable mention, then maybe an R, then a silver honorable mention, etc. So you can kind of see how other forumites are performing. And so I would suggest is finding somebody who has done really well in the contest, who have received silver honorable mentions, maybe semi-finalists, etc. Because they are performing well. They are good writers, and maybe they can find something and point something out. It's a lot better than if you're if you're swapping with somebody who's not selling yet. They're still, everybody's still trying to figure things out themselves and don't know as much that they'll be able to point out your blind spots as well.
Can I add to that the fact that in a workshop where they don't know any more than you do, you should not be there for more than a year with the same people. If you can change the group, whatever, but by the end of a year, you've heard everything they have to teach you, and they've heard everything that you can help them learn. But more important than that is you need to find a wise reader. And I don't mean an expert, because I have found that the English majors in my writing workshops are the worst critics, because they only know how to tell you how different it is from Ulysses or To the Likeness. And they don't know anything, because what they teach in literature classes in American universities is worthless to writers. You don't write to do that stuff. It just, symbols and metaphors and so on, they just come when you're writing. What you have to think of is the thing that they don't even understand, which is story structure. And where do you begin and why you begin.
But the foreshadowing.
Oh, the foreshadowing. The foreshadowing just shows that you were already thinking of the idea before you knew you were thinking of it. Anyway, and the wise reader is somebody close to you that you can impose on. It could be your mom, even though you know that she will only say praise to you. That's fine. Because what you need from them is not the doctor who walks into the emergency room and says, aspirin, next. Because what you find with a lot of critics in a circle, in a group, is that they prescribe before they even know what the symptoms are. And what you want is somebody who will read with pen in hand, not to fix typos, who cares, to instead put a mark in the margin when they find themselves being distracted. That means it's boring. If they found themselves looking at the wall, a line goes there. Another one is, if they find themselves going, oh, come on, they put a line there. The fix for that is not to eliminate the thing. The fix is to go back earlier in the story and set it up so that it is believable. But, and then the so what response, so what, oh yeah, and okay. Then the hardest one is you are doing it believably, you're writing so that it's, anyway, you've got it all down, except there are places where the readers don't understand what's going on. And so your wise reader, whenever they have to go back and reread to figure out what's going on, they put a mark. Now, they can write down something about it, but they are not someone who's going to tell you how to fix it. Because they don't know how to fix it, because they don't know how to write your story. The only person who knows how to write your story is you. And so only you can solve this problem. I don't know why I'm always looking at you, because you have a face that gives back. Anyway, I just wanted to make sure that you knew that you can all get wise readers, whether you join the workshop or not. Some of us are introverts. Some of us are anti-joiners. I would have never been able to do a workshop with other people because I don't care what they say. And that's a disease that has affected me since birth. And so there are people for whom the workshop just does not work. And there are other people who obey the workshoppers instead of using it as a springboard to their own ideas. And if you obey the workshoppers, that's as bad as a grammar checker. If you make all the changes a grammar checker suggests, it will sound like you're a Korean grad student who's got his first semester of English. Because nobody can write like you.
As a person who acts as an interlocutor for my friends, and connects the people who are all introverts and don't like connecting with others, that's my role to help connect them with people like the con, so that they actually get comfy and have people to talk to. I've read both of your works for years. I'm going to be looking at yours. But when you write, there's a certain amount of speculative fiction that happens with it, and you come up with concepts as part of building your world building. Has there ever been something you've been surprised that gets invented from people being inspired by your works?
You mean in the real world invented? No. And if it did, I wouldn't care. Because that's not why you write science fiction. You don't write science fiction to predict. You don't write science fiction to prescribe. You write science fiction to show what human beings are like under different conditions from the world we're in right now. And so if it did the job in your story, it's done. If somebody goes from that and says, oh, I'll make real communication satellites as happened to Arthur C. Clarke, great, that's wonderful. They're not going to give you a royalty. They're not going to pay you for it. So it's not going to be life-changing. What's going to matter is just, I'm glad somebody read and cared and thought about it. And who cares beyond that?
I know a couple of people who are studying molecular biology so that they can make dragons. I must say, I'm a little bit nervous about this, but okay.
Right here.
Okay, right, next question.
Okay, so I have two short questions, hopefully. The first, do you guys often have authors that will hit the Writers of the Future submissions with a story that they've submitted before but have come back and refined?
So they've submitted before to the contest?
Yes.
And the same story revised coming back?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that does happen.
My winner was a resubmission. To your point, I'm a firm believer of writing fresh because that's how you develop. The quarter that I won, the story that I wrote for Writers of the Future was held for consideration by FNSF. So a couple days prior to the deadline, I was like, what do I do? And so I revisited a story that earned a silver honorable mention. And revised it. The ending needed some help. Some of the sentences were clunky and it wasn't doing what I wanted them to do, and submitted it. Thinking I was probably going to get silver honorable mention again, and that was what won the contest for.
Good.
That's
Question
great.
two?
So question two is a little bit more specific. You mentioned the third person limited perspective being the primary, Mr. Clark, and I know you said present tense is the thing, and you were talking specifically past.
It depends upon what you're doing. L.A. Meyer wrote a series called Bloody Jack, which is first person present tense. Worked darn well. Your story sort of predicts where you want to put your viewpoint. There's a lot of, I mean, if you go to the Asimov's Foundation trilogy, that's an omnipotent third person view. It really depends.
Okay. So the question was, if you have, say, three main characters that you're really working with, how do you keep that perspective from shifting middle of like a chapter or a subset?
I've seen Mary Higgins Clark change point of view twice in the same paragraph. And because she began in an era when it was still possible to use omniscient. And you can do that in omniscient. You just can't get anywhere near as deep into a character as you can when you're sticking with one. What most people do, I'm sure you guys do this too, is you just skip a line space or put some asterisk or something in it so that it's clear to the typesetter that you've got to leave that space. And then after it, you immediately use the name of the new point of view character in the first sentence so we know we're in somebody else's head. You help guide us through the transition. And you can do that repeatedly. We'll get sick of it after a while if you do it like every 3 paragraphs. But there are times when you have something that your main point of view character can't be present for and can't observe. And you can use the happy device of having somebody tell him about it, or her, but you can also use the device of having somebody else's viewpoint. And just remember that anybody whose viewpoint you use, we need to know what happens to them by the end. Your denouement has to take care of them so that we know. And just remember that Jane Austen invented the third-person limited viewpoint. And if you really want to see it handled, sometimes inconsistently because she was inventing it, but Pride and Prejudice, you get Elizabeth's viewpoint. And the whole time that Jane is in London having her heart steadily broken, we don't even get the letters. I think we get just how Elizabeth thinks the letters are going. But she uses Elizabeth's viewpoint relentlessly, except for one key thing. Early on, the narrator tells us, that shows us Darcy's viewpoint for about 3 paragraphs, no divisions, where we get to know that Darcy has fallen in love with her. So that when he proposes to her, it comes out of the blue for her, but not for us. And that was a brilliant stroke, because you know what? There is no rule that can't be broken. You can even go ahead and awkwardly do something in present tense and have Mockingjay and Hunger Games succeed. But later, the later books in the Hunger Games series, it's obvious that she is struggling with that viewpoint. And most of the time when people write in present tense, they betray the fact that they're thinking in past tense anyway, because they'll use the pluperfect for the past of the story instead of the perfect, which would be he has gone, he has done. They'll go, he had already done. As soon as you do that, it says you're really writing in the past tense, so stop pretending. But that's okay. So anyway, somebody else has a question.
So we got a microphone right there.
We're on the 40th volume of Writers of the Future, 40 different anthologies published over the years. Do you have any favorite short stories that have been published in one volume or another? Maybe a couple that people should go back and pay attention to?
Mine.
Absolutely.
Mine. I think you should pay a lot of attention to the stories that I've had published in Writers of the Future.
Yes, and there's, it's funny because I can never pick the grand prize winner. The one that I really like, the ones I like the most are just, and that's one of the things that is really special at Rise of the Future, because sometimes you've got anthologies, it's to a theme, and Rise of the Future isn't to a theme. It's just the best new writers each year. So what you're getting in each volume are the best new writers of science fiction fantasy for that year, because everybody's been, there's a lot of submissions. For those of you spending on, we don't like to see how many it is, because just realize that if you get published in this, then you are recognized amongst the industry as the best new writer for that year. So any book that you go through, you're going to find these are the best for that year of science fiction fantasy. So you're going to find the Patrick Rothuses of the world. And you got some of the people that didn't make it to Rise of the Future, like Brandon Sanderson. He got an honorable mention. He didn't win, but he pro'd out after that.
I love that verb. That's a good verb.
Yes, pro'd out.
Find them all.
Exactly. So you're guaranteed to find something that you're going to like in any volume, because it's such an eclectic collection of science fiction fantasy. And sometimes we're about a half a dozen years ahead of whatever wave. Like you were reading steampunk 6 years before it became a rage in general in bookstores. You know, so anything you're going to find, like you'll find, you know, people were uploading into Science and Rise of the Future well before it became the thing you're going to find in science fiction in mainstream stores. So that's one thing you're going to find too is it's ahead of the curve. But it's guaranteed it is the curve that is coming.
There's another thing to remember, those of you who are submitting. One of the coolest things that you can ever have happen with a short story is get an illustration. You know? I remember when Frank Kelly Freas did the illustration on Analog for Womanly Talent, which was one of Mom's To Ride Pegasus stories, and she was just so thrilled. In this, every story that gets selected to go in the volume gets an illustrator assigned to do an illustration, and you get a color illustration in this book. Guys, it'll be years again, unless you're like, you know, super lucky, before you're going to get an illustration like that. So it's really cool, and everybody who's ever submitted and won has been so blown away by the artwork they got for their stories. It's like, this is perfect, is pretty much what they all say. So it's a huge, it's not just you submit a story, you get paid, you go out to Hollywood, you go ahead and get an award, you get PR and stuff. You got an illustration. So really, you know, when you're thinking about it, think about that one in a big way.
You've got a book cover quality illustration.
Yep, absolutely. There's a question over here.
Can you hold that closer?
Yeah, hold that closer.
I
think it just turned on. This is for Mr. Card. I was just wondering, when you have a new idea, what are kind of the first steps you take to kind of outline it, get it started, approach the story structure for it?
It's one word, why? Or if you stretch it out, what result and how are part of it. Why did this happen? Why is it like this? This can mean mechanical cause, something in the past that made it happen, or it can mean purposive cause, the Aristotelian cause, teleological cause, which means the purpose behind doing it. So there's two kinds of why. And then there's the result, whatever happens from it. So you sit there looking at your idea and you start going, well, why would this happen? Who would this affect? What would this result in? And if you're not a very resourceful writer, you will have a new invention cause people to riot in the streets. It's such a cliche of 50s and 60s science fiction that people would care enough for that. If they want to riot in the streets, they'll find a reason. And, you know, it's not, but anyway, what I love is when they come up with many different events, because nothing has just one result, and nothing has just one cause. So you don't just say why, you say why else, why else, why else. And as you go through the story, whying it and elsing it, you will start finding yourself getting more ideas than you can use in the story. And so they'll spin off, and you'll, you know, create Clifford and Shirley out of Happy Days. And you know, they'll have a life of its own. But that's how you do it, whether you're doing it alone or in a group of other people.
Great. Okay.
Hello. This question is more for Tom. Okay, so like you, for well over 20 years, I kind of dropped the ball. Okay, I dropped the ball on writing. And at my tender young age, I believe that I'm ready to start this again. That's part of the reason I'm in here. I don't have a college degree in anything, but I read a lot of books on writing. I go through free online courses. I go to writing conferences. But at this point, I feel like I'm starting over. I have to learn about structure and all of this stuff. How do you deal with what feels like a time crunch? Like, oh crap, I'm just starting this. I only have another 40, 50 years. You know, how do you deal with that?
I totally feel you. I am there every day. But you read a lot, right? You absorb stories, all of us do, but you've been doing it for a long, long time. You know what works inside of you. You know instinctively how a story works. So learn all the other stuff. take the video courses, listen to the mice approach from Scott here, all the different approaches, read them, absorb them, but basically also listen to what your instincts are telling you as a reader. It's something that you would read, it's something that you would enjoy. And it really comes down to you do have to do the work, you have to write every day. And that's really where it's going to come from. But the only time to start is now. So just do it now.
I would say that your story is in you, that you've got it ready, and all you need to do is get out of your own way, right? Just let it go. Allow yourself to be bad. Maybe the first story won't work, but if you don't allow yourself to be bad, you'll never get anything finished that you can edit later. You've got a story waiting for you, just listening to you talk. It's like, get it out there. We're going to want to see it.
And if you stumble, that's fine. Just keep going.
If you ever have the idea that self-doubt was mentioned earlier, that if you look at your own stuff and you go, oh man, they'll never like this. Remember that every writer, in order to succeed, has to simultaneously believe two things. One, that what you just wrote is the worst shit ever put on paper. And the other, Shakespeare would be so envious if he could see what you had just done. If you don't have the huge ego that says, this is wonderful, along with something that says, how am I going to fix this? You're not going to be able to succeed, because if you don't have the confidence, you're not going to even send it in. You're going to keep fiddling with it for years, killing the story with every new draft. And if you just send it out the minute you wrote it, which is what I did, maybe you're lucky, but I had some training that kicked in because I was a playwright for years before. But most of us have to learn how to do all of it. And so you probably won't immediately get positive recognition. But if you do, great. You're not doing anything wrong to get positive recognition. But you got to have some self-doubt. You got to have a lot of confidence.
Great. We have one last question here.
Okay, this is for all of you guys, but circa 2000.
We got 3 minutes left.
Circa 2004, we had Harlan Ellison here, and if there was anybody ever with a rant, it was him. Anti-internet and all that. Meanwhile, Scott Card's publishing weekly in Rhinoceros Times. I would have loved to have seen a debate between you, but what are your guys' thoughts on some of the new technologies as writers?
New technologies as writers. You mean like AI stuff? Well, as writers of the future, I'll just say right now, I've actually changed the rules like we do not allow AI on either writing or the illustration. And there's different tools we've got on the internet too. Yeah.
Also, there's no way in hell, right now, large language models, which is what everybody's calling AI, will write a good story. It can repeat an old story, but it is trained by existing stuff. So originality is not something it knows how to do. That will change in the future, and that's going to be a different story. You can buy my copy of it, I won't tell you which one. But seriously, right now, it ain't happening. And it's not happening in the marketplace. People are trying to submit AI stories because they think they know how to, AI's know how to write good stories, but it ain't happening. And anyway, what we want to see, what you want to get out there, deals with the experiences that you had throughout your life. It deals with who you are. We want a story that explores whatever's interesting to you about the world around you or the future of the world around you and all that. And that's not something you're going to get out of an AI.
Good. So I think we're at the end of our panel. So I want to thank you all very much. We have these cards up here that you can look and get this. Scott Card will be at our booth in America's Mark number 2 tomorrow from 4:30 to 7.
Yeah.
4:30 to 7 to sign books. He was here for 2 hours today, so tomorrow 4:30 to 7 to sign books. Todd, are you signing?
Nobody's asked me that. I don't have any books to sign. We'll talk. We'll talk.
And you'll be signing tomorrow.
Tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning, they'll be at our booth too. You're all welcome to come to that. And We have another Rise of the Future panel because we have so many judges here. So tomorrow at 1 o'clock, we have another panel in North.
Yes.
In the North Hall here. So
Who have you got?
who is it tomorrow?
Steve Howie,
Oh.
Kevin J. Anderson.
Uh-huh.
Steve Sterling.
Woo, I like Steve, he's a great guy.
Yeah. Nancy Kress.
And Nancy
Oh.
Kress.
It's a good lineup. Just come.
Yes. Great. Thank you very much. And thank you to our judges.